Viewers and subscribers, welcome back to Beating the Press podcast. This week, we have two mouth-watering clashes taking place on the weekend. First up, we have Leicester City facing Arsenal, and then the big one on Sunday, where Spurs take on the mighty Chelsea. Joining me this evening to preview these two matches, we have with us Sugar Belly.
Greetings, viewers and subscribers.
Sugar Belly, let's jump straight into it. We're going to start by previewing the Leicester City versus Arsenal game. How do you see these two teams heading into this fixture?
Well, a contrasting season for both teams. I think Leicester are having a very underwhelming season, while on the other hand, Arsenal are having a very overwhelming season. So straight away off the bat, Arsenal are my favorites going into this fixture. Leicester showing a good run of form over the past few games. However, I think Arsenal, after that strong reply at Aston Villa last weekend, will come out once again searching and gunning for that 3 points.
Yes, indeed. Leicester playing at home this one, coming off a 3-0 defeat to Man United in their last fixture, while Arsenal enter this one on the back of that magnificent comeback performance against Aston Villa. You know, Leicester, as you mentioned, hasn't been having the best of seasons, and their form at home is very poor as well. I believe they are the joint lowest points getter at home in this season thus far. So I'm sure Arsenal will have all guns blazing for this one. In terms of their lineup, however, how do you see both teams lining up? Are we still looking at Arteta as being that one-trick pony where not much rotation takes place? Or are
Defi-
you looking for some changes in this one?
Definitely, I don't expect much changes from Arteta. The only person I could think of is whether or not Partey would be fit for this one. We've seen in the last game how Martinelli made such an impact off the bench, so it's also interesting to see whether or not Arteta opts to start with Trossard or will he start with Martinelli. So it will be interesting to see how Arsenal line up there. Leicester, on the other hand, I know they have been through a few injuries, struggling for form. I think Jamie Vardy is nearing the sunset of his career right now. So in terms attacking wise, I expect Brendan Rodgers to have Iheanacho up there. So who has been in fine form over the past few game weeks, albeit they collected 3-0 last week. So uh, defensively, Leicester now seem to be stable in terms of they have this new signing, very tall centre back. I can't remember what's his name,
Is that
but
Vestergaard?
no,
4 years.
no man,
Okay.
different individual. He's forming the partnership with Woodfaz currently, so
Mm.
that's one key area to look at for Leicester. I think he's a very decent set piece threat. Uh, so going into this game, got Arsenal fully.
Yes, definitely. Leicester has been having a very up and down season, as you mentioned, a few injuries, a lot of rotation in terms of Brendan Rodgers trying to find the right 11, so to speak. We see players like Tillemans in and out of the team, Madison coming back from injury, playing some good games and then picking up a knock. So it's been a disrupted season for much of the Leicester players, but they do have some quality. As you mentioned a few names, Iheanacho up front, he does have a goal in him. Vardy can give you that burst of space or that burst of speed, I should say, if the space is left behind the defense for him to run into. And of course, you know, he has a thunderous finish as well. So while Leicester is not performing at their optimal, they still possess a threat to the Arsenal goal, wouldn't you say?
Definitely, the likes of Jamie Vardy, as we say, James Madison, we have Harvey Barnes out wide, can score at any time, explosive kind of player, you know. So they possess all the utilities that can catch even Arsenal on the break and be devastating. So very
Yes.
interesting going into this game.
Yes, indeed. I'm sure
Definitely.
Arsenal will be coming to take the game to Leicester, but they definitely has to be wary of that counter-attacking threat and the speed that the Leicester team possess in transitioning from defense to attack as well. So fascinating though, I find it uncanny that Arteta hasn't been rotating his squad much. I've been reading in the media a few players are now becoming frustrated by the lack of game time. Plus, players such as Tierney, for example, has been coming out, rumors circulating that he might be on the move in search of more game time. So Arteta as a man manager now needs to show his skill set because players in the fringes are somewhat, I would say, becoming a little discontent. So even though
Yes,
they're on top of the league, as a player within the squad, you want to know that you're contributing towards that success as well.
yes,
And
that was one of the problems that I found with Arteta as a manager, especially throughout this season. The results are going his way. However, I think he has failed to really integrate those fringe players to a level where they can come in and put in the performances that are needed to in a championship winning team, so to speak, because we see where Trossard might come in, but he hasn't played in the last 3 games, so he doesn't look as sharp as he should be. Whether he gets a 5 minute here and there, with 5 subs, we would be expecting more players to see at least half hour off the bench. So that's one area where I think Arteta can definitely work on in galvanizing his squad to play better. Definitely.
yes, indeed, we'll definitely see how he lines up for this one against Leicester. But in terms of the gameplay, how do you see the game playing out and what's your predicted result for this one?
Arsenal and Leicester, I think Arsenal normally has a good performance or gets good results against Leicester. So definitely I think Arsenal will control the proceedings. The tempo of the game should be dictated by them. So I expect them to be have total control and be dominant over this Leicester City side, who we see where they give up a lot of goals very easily, whether from open play or from set pieces. So Arsenal all the way, as I have said multiple times.
But in terms of a specific results, though, how are you seeing it? How are you calling it? What's a scoreline we can look for?
A possible 4-0 to Arsenal,
4
definitely.
nil.
Yes.
Well, I'm with you on that. I definitely think Arsenal will have too much for Leicester, and I'm saying 3-1. I do believe Leicester has a goal in them, especially at home. So I'm gonna go 3-1 in that game. But let's segue across to the next big match on the weekend. This one comes up on Sunday. It's a London derby. Spurs versus Chelsea. Talk to us about this matchup.
Well, from a Chelsea perspective, it's looking to be a tough one coming up. We know it's a derby game, so form could be said to go through the window. So
Mm,
it was very interesting to see how both teams approach this game. We know Spurs gone in for that top 4 spot. I think Chelsea just gone in for a little pride, so to
mm,
speak, because we have only scored once in the last 7 or 8 games. So a
indeed.
lot to work on for Potter going
23
into this
goals
one.
scored over the season thus far. But interestingly, though, Chelsea has only managed to score 23 goals, and putting that into context, Man City, the leading scorer in the league, has scored 60, and Arsenal has scored 51. So Chelsea is pretty much averaging a goal per game. Having played 23 matches, they have managed to score 23 goals. But the fun fact is, they have the second meanest defense in the league. So even though they're not scoring a lot, they're not necessarily giving away a lot of goals. So putting that into context, Newcastle, who leads the league in terms of the least amount of goals conceded. They have conceded only 15 goals. Chelsea has conceded joint only 23 goals with Arsenal, who has also conceded 23 goals. So it's going to be a very interesting game, I would say, against Spurs. Personally, I'm expecting this to be a very tactical game, a very stop-start game. I'm not looking for a lot of goals, to be honest with you. But in terms of team selection, how do you see Potter and Conte in terms of their team selection?
Well, as with Antonio Conte, I expect Spurs to come out with their well. It's very interesting because in the last game week, I think Spurs started Son on the bench. We saw Richarlison coming from the start, so it
Mhm.
would be very interesting to see whether or not the Tottenham manager opts for that routine again because Son was brilliant off the bench. I think he scored with his first touch coming off the bench, so that's one area to look out for. Defensively, we see where Emerson Royal now, the right wing back, he has gone on a run of form. So he has been keeping the new signing Pedro Porro out of the side now. So I expect him to start there at right back. I'm not sure how the suspension is with Romero. I think he's out, so Spurs would have to also find someone to fill in there for that one. But in terms of Chelsea now, on the other hand, Potter now still searching for his best 11.
Mm.
We had a free week, so it's interesting to see who starts, as many of the players who he claims have been fatigued over the past few weeks, are struggling with injury, have been given a rest. So we expect those to come in, hopefully, to put together that performance that is needed because it's 3 points that's well needed by Chelsea right now.
Yes, yes, I must concur. Chelsea coming off that shock defeat to the bottom of the table team. 1-0 at home at that. James Ward-Prowse stepping up with that magnificent free kick and capturing all 3 points for Southampton. Spurs, on the other hand, they are coming off a 2-0 win over West Ham, another derby game right there. And they look good value for that win, I must say. I would not change that team, to be honest. I think that team is playing well, and I think they could pick up some momentum. So I would continue with that similar or that same lineup from the previous game against West Ham. Not many changes. I think Spurs needs to build some continuity in terms of their starting 11. So I'm feeling Conte may very well wash, rinse, repeat with that team. Chelsea, on the other hand, too many chopping and changing. Too many chopping and changes. No continuity. Players in, players out. But I think in terms of they are getting players available, and I think in terms of their best 11, I would go with the tried and tested Chilwell and James at left and right back. Silva partnering Batshuayi there in the centre back position. Of course, Kepa is currently unchallenged right now with Mendy out injured for that goalkeeper spot. In the midfield, I would go Enzo Kovacic. And the third selection may prove a bit challenging. But Enzo Kovacic for sure. Possibly Felix as that attacker playing that number 10 role. And then, of course, up front, that is where the difficulty lies. Who will get you those goals? Chelsea need to start scoring. We've been saying that all season. The mistake in the transfer market must have been failure to secure a number 9. Chelsea have bought everything except a 9, the key position which they require. So Potter has to galvanize the troops, select some offensive players who he thinks might do the job, and try to pull one out.
Well, we've seen last week where he started out the game with an out and out number 9, Nacho Fofana. Um, he played only 45 minutes, albeit but I think he looked very promising.
Mm,
Um, However, Potter seems reluctant to give him that free rein up there up front. I saw him hauled off at halftime for no reason
mm.
specifically. So
Hey,
it's very,
it
very,
might
very
take some time
challenging.
for him to get used to the rigors of the EPL. Not everyone survives the EPL, Sometimes it's a step too much for some players.
Definitely. Well, with the change of formation currently, I think Potter has opted for a more hands-on approach where he has left that 5R back three, then playing now a 4-2-3-1, a more conventional formation where
Mm.
I guess most of the new guys coming in, it wouldn't be a brain buster to fit into that
Keeping
formation.
it simple.
So yes, so hopefully he can find some level of consistency with this current formation, I guess, to see out this current season. So in terms of the lineup, I expect Kai Havertz to return up top. Uh, I expect Sterling to return. So in a 4-2-3-1, we might see Havertz, Sterling, Felix,
Felix.
uh, one either Madueke or Modric there
Mm.
on the left hand side.
Oh, do you
Probably
mean
a Mason Mount as well.
Mason Mount? Right, right.
Yes. A few weeks ago we see where Loftus Cheek and Enzo Fernandez played as an anchor.
But that's the problem Chelsea's having. There's no consistency to the starting 11. Each week we're seeing a different player. At this point, with Potter being in the job over this period, he must by now knows his best 11. He has to,
Well,
because right now he's
clearly
under
that is
pressure.
not the case. Clearly that is not the case. So
I don't know how much time he'll get. I'm hearing noise in the Chelsea camp. So I really do wish him all the best. But in terms of how do you see this game playing out, and what's your take on the final result?
well, as I said earlier, it's a derby game, so I expect Farm to go through the window fully for this one. Um, in recent history suggests that Chelsea have the upper hand against Tottenham. I think we're unbeaten in the last 5 or 6 games against them. So I guess our players would like to ride on that wave coming into the game and try to build confidence and
Mm.
get that victory.
And in terms
I
of a
expect
final result, what say you?
personally, I see this game playing out to a draw.
Mm,
Definitely.
draw.
So my prediction would be a 1-1 draw.
1-1 draw. For me, I see nothing other than a Spurs win. I think Spurs will pull out a 1-0 victory. So I'm definitely backing Spurs for this one. It should be a tightly contested game, as you say. So the draw is not beyond the realms of imagination. But at home, uh, with a bit of form behind them, Chelsea not scoring much. Chelsea neither are they conceding a lot. So it's gonna be a tight defensive game. I'm thinking 1-0 for Spurs. Any final thoughts, however?
Well, Spurs, Chelsea, I expect this game to be fully decided in the midfield area where we know Hoiberg, Spurs now struggling there because they have a few key injuries. I think most of their defensive midfielders are out. In the last game, I think they started with Oliver Skip and what's his name, Sar.
Sar,
So
yes, yes.
that's an era to look at. I think it's an era for Chelsea to come and try and exploit. So that's where we need to work on. In terms of possession, I don't think Chelsea struggles in those areas. As you said as well, we are one of the teams that concede the least amount of goals. So really and truly finding the back of the Spurs net should be the Chelsea aim on Sunday. However, we see where that is so elusive at the moment. So
Mm.
I don't know what to expect at this time.
Yes, indeed. It should definitely be a fascinating watch. But there you have it, viewers and subscribers. Thank you again for joining us on Beating the Press podcast. I'd just like to extend my thanks to Sugar Belly also for coming on and sharing his thoughts and his perspectives. Well, it should be a enjoyable weekend. So until next time, this is Rafa signing off.